And right now we're on a shared screen, but because I'm speaking, probably my image is being recorded at the moment. I want to welcome you all here to this Maha Savasana, the great death is the theme of what we're going to be studying today. And I was going to say, if you want to take notes while we're together, you can, but again, you'll also have the recording later. So you may find that you would prefer to just stay present during this and make any notes later when you review the recording, so that you can really immerse yourself in what we're doing today. So I'd like to begin actually with our introductions. You know, a little bit about me from the description of the program, and you know, I have this strong background in yoga, primarily Iyengar yoga, and a lifetime of working in, I think, of a form of service, a calling, helping others, and my interest in how we die. Really, the seed was planted when my dad was dying, and that was it was around 2005, and that's when I started wondering more about how we do this. And so I've studied with many. I've been really lucky to have many wonderful teachers. It was funny, the question came up for me years before the teachers did. I guess other people were asking these questions too, and then the teachers appeared. So I was very fortunate to be able to study with Ram Dass, Bodhi B, Jerry Grace Lyons, and others. And I want to share what I've learned, and it's kind of me blending it with the yoga, you know, taking lessons that I've had from others and then blending it with yoga. Even my Indic studies teacher, Professor Edwin Bryant, he will mention frequently when we're studying the scriptures, the references to death, and the significance of death and awareness of death in the spiritual studies, which has been really helpful as well for me in making these connections. So that's a little bit about me and why I'm here. And maybe let's go with Sandra. Would you like to say a bit, and each of you say something about, just introduce yourselves and say a bit about what has brought you here and where you are.
Thank you. Thank you for being here for this workshop possible. I really appreciate this opportunity because it's not common to talk about this. When I was studying Buddhism in Colombia, I'm from Colombia. We have in a group to not help, accompany people to die. So we have a close contact with kids. They had a cancer, and the families, how they can live the process. And always I believe, and actually when I made an apoa, it's a preparation to that, I believe that we need a lot of tools to make this step free of freedom, no, of scare. Fear. So yes, for that I am here.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Elliot. I'm from Venezuela, and yeah, I'm here just curious. I also practice a lot, and yeah, no specific reason for this class. Sandra told me about it. She signed up, and yeah, I'm just curious, eager to learn.
Glad to have you here too, Elliot. Cindy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cindy. I'm in North Van, and I'm drawn to almost every class Lee puts out because I love learning with her and having her as my teacher. This subject touched me. I've had many people die recently, friends, family, neighbors, not just elders. So it always brings it home. My dad passed away about 11, 12 years ago. So that was the beginning for me of starting to really look at this more seriously. We never know. You can be old, you can be young, right? So as Sandra said, with children, yeah. So it's preparing a journey. When you pack your stuff to go on a trip, you usually research a little bit. So I'm feeling like I need to look at this more seriously. So I started reading more um, about death and how to really take the fear out of it and be prepared for a journey that you don't know where you're going, but you don't really need to pack anything. You just need to have some things in your mind sorted out. So, yeah, taking some of the fear away and preparing a little bit feels like the time to start doing that.
Thank you, Cindy. I love that, preparing for a journey. And in a way, even more than packing, we're unpacking for the trip. Yeah, because we're going to be traveling light on this one. And the lighter, from what I've understand, the lighter we can pack, the easier it's going to be to let go and carry on this journey. So I've also been fortunate to assist people with their preparations and be present at times as well. So I just, I sent you all this handout. It's not really a handout, it's an outline for today, just so you had some sense of our journey together. And I did add some quotes here as well in this, but I'll come to that in a minute. I just want to do a little review first of some things. So the books I'm primarily going to be referring to during this are Light on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, B.K.S. Iyengar's translation, and the Bhagavata Purana. And this translation was written by my teacher, Edwin Bryant, and it is full of tales. And the thing is, because the thing with tales, the purpose of tales is they try to express to us that which cannot be easily expressed or easily explained. It tends to be non-rational. It's so that the tales are intended to give us a glimpse of something deeper. And then also from the Bhagavad Gita, and this is my favorite version, translation of the Bhagavad Gita. I'll be reading you can see they're well earmarked. All my books are well used. And there's a couple of, I won't be referring to all of the marked pages, but there's a few things I will be referencing while we're here together. And now I just also want to review with you what you need for today. If you have a bolster, you don't have to have a yoga mat because we're going to be primarily on the ground. We will do a little bit of a slow flow at one point, but just as long as you're not going to be sliding on the ground, you'll be fine. And I have a bolster and a blanket. And if you do not have a bolster, you can perhaps come up with a series of blankets or pillows, preferably firm pillows, and they need to run the length of your spine. So that's, I could take a blanket like this, open it to this size, and then fold it in half, and then it's the length of a bolster, and I could stack a few of these on top of each other. So that's a possibility if you don't have a bolster and you have blankets you can use. We're going to be doing supported postures for the most part today, some pranayama. And so we'll be primarily on the ground. Make sure you're warm enough. And as for the yoga breaks, you can have them, or some books would do. They're not essentially, just at some point you might want to tuck them under the knees for some extra support. And you don't need to bring your own skeleton, but I thought it was appropriate to have my buddy here, who's been with me for a long time and is a pretty good reminder for me of what is actually inside my vehicle, which is kind of a stunning thing to consider. So now if we're ready, we're going to begin in a seated posture, just a little centering practice to start with. If you'd all like to come to a comfortable seat, and if you do have support like I have, and I'm just going to pin my image now so that that'll be what will be shown on the screen. Okay, if say Sandra, if you're able to adjust your screen so that I'll be able to observe you as well when you come into your pose. But for now, we're going to sit. So you can take however much height you need to be able to sit. You could sit on your bolster. You could sit on a blanket. And really, this is entering into our practice. I'm sitting in Sukhasana, simple cross-legged pose. As you can decide what is most comfortable for you to be able to sit for, we're just going to be here for 5 minutes. It doesn't take very long to drop in and check in and connect with that sattvic state, to cultivate that sattvic state. Okay, so I'm just giving a moment for everyone to come into a seated posture and lifting the spine. In the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, Patanjali is very specific about sthira sukha, an erect spine. However, I've been told the Babas in India are more likely to have not read that book, and they're going to be sort of hanging out in whatever posture is comfortable for them. But we're advised to take an erect spine, shoulders back. If you can align the crown of the head over the crown of the pelvic floor. And your position should be sukha. There should be ease in your posture, which means groins are relaxed. And it's effortless to sit here, reasonably effortless. For us Westerners, sitting is not very effortless. Now come to the most effortless posture you can achieve. And then with an exhalation breath, close your eyes if you haven't already. And with the eyes closed, descend your inner gaze to the heart center, the abode of the Atman. Now, this is a yoga workshop, yoga-based study. And so I'll be referring to the terms for that which is greater than the individual self, or the God of your understanding, largely in yoga terminology, but you're entirely welcome to envision what you connect most with as sacred. And then as you drop the gaze toward the heart center, on your next exhalation breath, descend your mind to your heart center, disconnecting from the brain, and allow the mind to settle in that region of the heart center surrounded by the bony rib cage. And observe your breath, the prana, and breathing into the same region of the heart center. Let the belly be soft. And as you abide here in the heart center, the abode of the Atman, can you connect with a sense of vastness here, unrestrained by your bony skeleton? With each exhalation, prolonging the exhalation breath. In the epic poem, the Mahabharata, the sage Yudhishthira is asked, of all things in life, what is the most amazing? Yudhishthira answers that a man seeing others die all around him never thinks that he will die. And then after your next exhalation breath, opening your eyes. Now, I'd like to say that I attempt to be as gender neutral as possible in some of these readings, but when I'm quoting, I will quote what was apparently or supposedly said in that case, okay? And I hope you observe that you are somewhat a little bit more peaceful, just as a matter of sitting for just a few minutes. And this is, in a sense, allowing ourselves to move toward pratyahara, no longer focused on the external stimulus. And this is imperative in preparation for death, that we're able to remove ourselves. This is part of our unpacking process, is to be able to let go of outside stimuli, or at least let go, be less attached to it. So now I wish to bring up that chart that I said I would share with you. So we're going to move into a pratyahara practice. I just want to give you a visual first, in case that's of any help here. There we go. Okay, so this is taken from the Yoga Sutra, Light on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. This is a chart made by B.K.S. Iyengar on Kriya Yoga, which is the path of yoga referred to by Patanjali in the second chapter. And so what I really want to pay attention to here in this chart, and if you have questions about this, you can ask, is we have the 8 limbs of yoga that most people studying yoga are familiar with, from the yama, niyama, asana, pranayama. And we can see that this is put into what I want to focus on here is Baharanga, sadhana, and then pratyahara, dharana, moving from Baharanga to Antaranga. It's a little more inward. and then Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi, moving toward Antaratma and being the most internalized, deepest connection to the Atman. Now, Pratyahara, we can see is in the first and the middle section. And Pratyahara in the studies, in the light on Yoga Sutras, any copy of the Yoga Sutras, Pratyahara is the last to be discussed in the second pada, and which contains the second chapter. Pada contains all of the first limbs from Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, which is the chapter on practice. And then the third chapter is Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. Pratyahara is a threshold of moving from the external to the internal. Okay, so these 8 limbs follow progression. Now, if anybody has a question about this, you're good. And I'd like to read from on Pratyahara, which is the last 2 verses in chapter 2, chapters known as padas. In chapter 2.54, withdrawing the senses, mind, and consciousness from contact with external objects, and then drawing them inwards toward the seer, is Pratyahara. Now the mind is able to concentrate, and the senses no longer importune the mind for their gratification. They lose interest in the tastes and flavors of their respective objects, and are drawn back from the external world in order to help the mind in its inner quest. This is Pratyahara. This is the foundation of the path of renunciation. As a bird cannot fly if one of its wings is cut off, so it is in the case of the sadhaka, the student. The 2 wings of yoga are practice from yama to pranayama, and renunciation from pratyahara to samadhi. For flight, both are necessary. When the yogi dwells in their soul, perceiving all things directly, without the intervention of chitta, the conscious faculty. So it's pratyaharas are movement inward, and the reference is toward the seer. You know, which I love this when we enter into these studies, when we begin our spiritual studies, we're seekers, and then we're seeking outward. And when we do that, and then we realize what we're seeking is the seer, which takes us inward. Then in the last verse on Pratyahara, Pratyahara results in absolute control of sense organs. The effect of Pratyahara is felt when the senses are mastered and the mind is ripe and avid for its spiritual quest. When the senses have ceased to run after pleasures obtained from the phenomenal world, they can be yoked to serve the soul. Okay, and this is a lifelong quest, as we know. And those of us who practice yoga understand it doesn't mean giving up everything, but it does request that we, or demand that we give up our attachment to them. There's one tale of a great king who goes off to live in the Himalayas. He gives up everything except he takes he goes with his partner, his wife goes with him, and they leave their kingdom, they leave their belongings, and they go to live in the mountains, in a cave, and to seek enlightenment. And then one time he's visited by a sage, and tells the sage that he he's given up everything and he's still waiting for enlightenment, and it hasn't come yet. And the sage said, well, you haven't given up anything, because you still think about all your belongings, even though you're living here in this cave. So giving up our attachment is not a material act as much as it is a mental practice. Okay, it still exists on the material plane as we do, but it is not necessarily mean that you have to try to live in the mountains alone. What we have to do is, the first time I went to study in India with Guruji Iyengar, and he gave a talk, and when he spoke to us, he said, you have to go into your own cave. And I thought that was so powerful for me at the time, that you have to go deep into your own cave. So even if you live in downtown Vancouver or wherever we are, and we are out in the world and it is unavoidable, but still we learn how to become less attached to everything around us, right? Which is a challenge. Now we're going to do a practice on letting go. And I just want to read something else to you first before we come into this practice, because we're going to experience what it is to let go of our material body. Okay, so this is a practice that we can do when you're seeking tools, then this is something that can be practiced. So when the earth element and the sense of smell withdraw and move into the water element, we have no appetite for food. Our body feels unbearably heavy, which is a beautiful irony. As we see, we become physically diminished with age, or when actively dying. Sudden death, not so much, but if somebody goes through the process of actively dying over a period of time, then the physical body becomes diminished. We lose the earth element. Yeah. And with that, we lose the sense of taste or smell. We lose the sense of smell. And then we move toward the water element, which is going to be the next to leave. And we become less interested in food. We become dehydrated in appearance. And we may have thirst, or at least people will think we have thirst. Yeah. And then we move into the fire element as the water, the earth element let go, the water element let go, the fire element then is the next to let go. So there's a sequence, and we lose heat in the body. We lose that vital energy, that heat in the body, and the body becomes cool. And here we may be thirsty but are unable to drink. We're losing bodily fluids. And then from the fire element, we move to the air element and the sense of touch. We lose a connection with the sense of touch. Touch may not be pleasurable anymore. And we're moving deeper inward in this period. So to the outside world, to people viewing us, we're becoming physically, the elements are leaving us in this order, okay? And so then we lose our breath at this point too, you know? And the last is the ether, which we don't really recognize here, which is a more spatial sense, a more spatial element, so that there's a less of a physicality altogether, a less of an occupation as as we begin to slip away. So this is and then what people will do is they want to give us this. They want to feed us and give us more of an earth element. They want to give us water. They want to quench our thirst and rehydrate us. And so this is a counter to the experience of leaving the body. What we're going to do right now is in Shavasana 2, lying over the bolster, I'm going to guide you through letting go of the elements, starting with the earth element, and experience this in your body. And this is something you could potentially guide someone else through if it's something that they are open to. It's something for you to experience for yourself in terms of letting go. Shavasana being the corpse pose. What you'll do is, I'd like you to be elevated. If you don't have something that you can support yourself with, you can lie flat on the floor, but I prefer you are a little bit elevated on a bolster, a stack of blankets, or pillows. It will allow for you to breathe a little bit more easily in this. And then I'm going to just press the end of the bolster down to create space for my lumbar, and then lifting the hips, tucking the tailbone, and stretch out through the legs. The spine is long and fully supported all the way to the crown of the head on my support. Okay, so the sacrum is off of the bolster, and then the buttocks are on the ground. And then here you'll just extend the arms out, stretch out through the legs. If you have an eye cover, you could place it over your eyes. And make sure you're warm enough, unless you want to experience becoming cold. I've done that in yoga classes. I said, okay, I'm going to let myself be a corpse. I'm going to experience what it is to have my body get cooler and cooler, and I'm not going to fight it. But here, for the sake of this practice, I'm not asking you to do that. I want you to be able to focus on the meditation. And if you're not comfortable enough, you'll be distracted by that. And that's what the outside world does. So I'll just give you a moment to get set up. And this is a practice of pratyahara, moving inward. As soon as you settle in, we'll be here for a few breaths, observing the breath settle. From our first seated practice, you became aware of how profound just a few breaths can be as we focus on that. Of course, exhaling will be the last action of the body we ever experienced. And as you settle in here, let the body be heavy as it would be. We're aware of the weight of our bodies already, of sometimes our bodies feel delightful. They give us joy. They work for us successfully. Maybe we enjoy running. We know we enjoy yoga, whatever it is that we do that we find delight in physically. But here, we're going to experience those times where we feel the heaviness of the body. And we've all experienced this too, perhaps when we've had an injury, an illness, when we feel like sleeping in. As you rest over your support, with an exhalation breath, letting go everywhere, and allow your body to be heavy. Pratyahara is the folding inwards of the organs of perception. And as we do so, we close these gates of perception, the sensory organs, the two eyes, the nostrils, ears, mouth, and skin. Relaxing the jaw by letting the teeth part, tongue spreading in the lower palate. Inner mouth may be open, outer mouth is closed. Eyes recede deep into the sockets. And with an exhalation breath, feel your brain float to the back of the skull. Ears also float back. Rather than the outer sensation against the skin, feel the inner lining of the skin like a soft cloth. And through the weight of the body, can you feel the presence of your skeleton, the cranium, the bony rib cage, the femur bones, and the earth element, which is associated with the Muladhara chakra of the lower pelvis, the lesser pelvis, begins to diminish. And as it does, you lose your sense of smell. And then the water element associated with the lower abdomen, the Swadhisthana chakra, also begins to diminish, withdrawing from the body. And we lose the sense of taste. Taste no longer interests us. When we're unable to smell food or our environment, then we begin to lose our taste for it. So the sense of smell, the sense of taste fold inwards. And then the fire element associated with the Manipura chakra in the solar plexus region begins to diminish. The fire element is connected to our drive, as the water element is to our recreation, and the earth element to our physicality. All of these begin to fold inwards. And with the diminishing fire, we lose our vision. Our vision weakens. And as our vision weakens, our connection to the outside world continues to weaken, lessen. And then the air element, the Anahata chakra, the chest region, center of prana, also diminishes. And we lose our sense of touch. The sensation of touch is no longer as present, and we may not enjoy receiving touch in the same way. So it's muffled, it's muted, and it's not as discerned as it previously was. So the sense of touch, vision, taste, smell, all fold inwards. And we no longer experience the outside world through these senses in the same way as these elements leave our bodies. And then finally, ether, associated with Vishuddhi, folds inward. And the sense of hearing, said to be the last to go, diminishes or is lost. And then all the elements from ether, air, fire, water, earth progressively diminish as we make our way toward the Mahat, which is a cosmic greatness outside of the body, no longer part of the material world. As our connection to the perceptions, the external sensory perceptions, is lost, is diminished, they no longer interest us in the same way. And we gradually dissolve into the great Mahat. Staying with your breath here. Yoga Sutra 1.16 tells us, once free from all forms of thirst, self-realization and union with the Atman occurs. In this way, if one has a spiritual practice, we're not only leaving something, we're not only leaving the experience of the senses, we're moving towards something. Finally, the Atman is being revealed. And pay attention now to how this feels for you, this as a realization. What it is to, using words that were brought up earlier, to unpack your relationship to the sensory phenomena and let it go. And when we do this, it is, as described in the Yoga Sutras, like cleaning a mirror of debris. And we've been so distracted by what covers the mirror that we were unable to see the reflection of the Atman. And now we can see it before us. Brilliant, loving, ready to receive us. now deepening your breath, I'm going to invite you back into this space. Taking a few fuller rounds of inhalation, exhalation breath. And then draw in your knees. You'll take your left arm across your torso and roll off to your right side. Stay there for a moment. Taking time so that the imprint of what has been experienced stays with you. Then turning toward the floor, push yourself up. You'll just do a little movement here, slowly. You'll bring your bolster between your knees. You can remove the blanket, or if you wish to just open it up over the bolster. And we'll do a slow flow coming through Adho Mukha Virasana, Adho Mukha Svanasana, and Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. Stretch out through the arms and drive the palm pads into the mat. Descend your buttocks toward your heels. Spread your palms. Experience the sensation of your skin against the yoga mat. Roll the weight from the outer finger to the base of the thumb and index finger. Press all the fingers down individually. Be intentional, not casual, of the experience of your embodiment. Have the hands wide enough that the little fingers touch the outer edge of your mat. And then again, push down the buttocks. And can you now come onto your fingertips and walk your fingers a little bit more forward, get more length in the spine. Head is up, locking the shoulder blades to the back. Feel the bones of the shoulder blades, the scapula against the back ribs. And then rest your forehead. The diaphragm of the thoracic diaphragm is supported on your bolster. Lungs are suspended as the abdominal wall, the chest wall are supported on your bolster. Arms are active. The karmendriyas of the arms and legs have the word karma in them and the word Indra. Prashant Iyengar told me that we are of Indra, celestial in nature. Stay in your pose and just give me your ears. We use the actions of the karmendriyas in this world, but they are not of this world. Slow, soft, easy breathing. And now come forward onto your knees, turn the toes under, push back into Adho Mukha Svanasana. And if your head can be supported by your bolster, that's wonderful. If not, let the back of the neck be long and let the head hang. Now here we experience the karmendriyas of the arms, the legs, and the earthiness, the earth element of the limbs as they support us. They have that connection grounded into our mat, into our environment. And they are sturdy and formidable as the earth element. And then in the pelvic region is watery, Can you bring your awareness to the watery element of the pelvic region? And the lightness of the solar plexus. As we draw that fire energy from the solar plexus into the limbs. And then with the hands wide, we feel the prana in the chest box. We broaden across the collarbones. And then look forward, exhale into Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. Let the pelvis rest on the bolster, legs are active, extend out through your heels, press down through the palms, and stand up in your arms. Lift the sternum from the bottom up. Eyes soft. Can you still experience the eyes receding inward? Can you still experience the stira sukham, the steadiness and the sweetness in this pose, which is the more challenging of the three? And then bend your knees, push back into Adho Mukha Virasana one last time. Supported on the bolster. And as you go through this slow flow, it teaches us how to maintain that inward focus, that sattvic state, as you move through a very pacifying pose, supported pose, to a more challenging pose in this sequence. Finding the peaceful state in this supported Adho Mukha Virasana, often called child's pose because of its the comfort it gives us. It's a soothing pose. Now, as we do this sequence again, can you bring this with you, retain this imprint as you come forward into Adho Mukha Svanasana. And those of you, if you can keep the head supported, then even more so you'll be able to retain that quiet inward state. But either way, let the back of the neck be long, let the head hang if it's not supported. And be with your breath. Be with that quiet inward experience of the breath. And so we've upped the challenge from Adho Mukha Virasana to Adho Mukha Svanasana. Can we retain this quiet inward experience as we experience greater demand? Look forward, swing the hips forward, come into Urdhva Mukha Svanasana one last time. Press down through the palms, lift up through the armpit chest, lift the sternum from the bottom up, descend the sacrum from the top down. Eyes soft, breath soft. Can you have the same inward experience now as you did in Adho Mukha Virasana? It may wax and wane every few breaths. Renew your pose. And then bend your knees. And we'll just sit back on your heels. We're going to do one more practice before we take a small break for discussion. Now you're going to sit on your bolster and take as much height as you need to be able to sit tall. And sitting with legs crossed, we're going to do a pranayama Brahmari. Now, we'll do the Sanmukhi Mudra using the hands in this pose as well. Now, sometimes, and depending on your support, the knees can become uneven, so you could take a blanket and slip it under the knees to help levelize them. And see that whatever you're sitting on gives you enough support to lift the spine. Now, Brahmari is considered the one pranayam that one could do before going to bed. Most of the other pranayams are considered more stimulating, aside from Ujjayi exhalations. Brahmari is called the bumblebee because of the sound that we make when we do it. But what's important about Brahmari, that I'm bringing it into this, is that we literally cover the sense organs. We block the sense organs, and then we make a sound to fill the self internally, to remove the possibility of thoughts. Okay, which is, thoughts are, and this is again something that's very important at the time of death, that we have this practice that we have in some way harnessed our minds so that we're able to have some element of, if not control over our thoughts, at least the ability to separate ourselves from them. Because thinking is a byproduct of the nervous system, like sweating and other things that we do unconsciously, that our body just does automatically, part of the autonomic nervous system. Thoughts are just like this. And our thoughts are composed of our past experience. And not all of our past experience, just what we remember, what makes an imprint on us. And what makes an imprint on us is sometimes, it's not always as discerning. As we mature, we can be more discerning about what makes an imprint on us. But when we're younger, we don't. We just have this phenomena that bombards us, and sometimes it's very traumatic. And sometimes what stands out for us in our memories is difficult for us to process. And when these memories come up, when these samskaras come up, they are triggers, right? So then, say, as Ram Dass has said, we go out into the world and we're bombarded by all this phenomena every day, but most of it, or some of it, we never even notice. Don't notice it at all. It's only the phenomena that we have receptors for, triggers for, that we're going to pick up on. They can be positive, they can be negative, we could be neutral about it, but there's only so much that we're going to receive, and it's based on imprints that are already in us. Okay, so now we're going to learn how to harness our minds through these practices, and this is what yoga is all about, so that we have a say in this. And when I say that's what yoga is all about, I could teach a workshop on something else and say that's what yoga is all about. Yoga is about so many, so much, so full. To do this mudra, you're going to, so let's think of what our sensory organs are: eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and skin. Skin, we're not going to be able to fully cover, but we are going to take our hands and place the index and middle finger lightly over the eyes. And then you place the ring finger by the nostrils, the pinky finger over the lips, And the last thing you'll do is you'll place your thumbs over the ear openings. But you won't do that quite yet. Just get the position. And as you place your hands here, pay attention to your posture. There can be a tendency to push your face into your hands and jut the neck forward. Instead, see that you're still retaining a neutral spine, crown of the head over the crown of the pelvic floor, and bring your hands to you rather than your face to your hands. And then lift the elbows without lifting the shoulders, okay? Let's do our best to make this as effortless as possible. Let the inner shoulders descend downwards and lift the elbows, lifting the triceps to the bones. Now, what you'll do in this practice is take a full Ujjayi exhalation, and on your exhale, you hum the sound of the bumblebee. Or you hum, and it will sound like a bumblebee, okay? And when we do this, you'll want to fully cover the ears. See that your fingers over your eyes remain very light. It's very delicate tissue. Everyone start with an exhalation breath, and then inhaling. Cover your ears, and exhale with a hum. And then repeat this 5 times. When you finish your 5 rounds, you can lower your arms. Just take a moment to receive how you feel. And this was a practice in Pratyahara. There are many ways we can approach drawing the awareness inward, so that and I love how Guruji Iyengar puts it, so that the sensory phenomena no longer importunes on us. I'd like to take a break here and ask you about how your experience was for you and anything that may have come up for you, if you'd like to share.
Well, I have to say that bumblebee, I love love that. I really love it. It made me feel just blissful, like, and wonderful. I'm going to practice that a lot.
Good. Yeah, so there's a tool, a positive tool. Yeah, for what stands out for us. Anything else? Anything else come up? I feel like you've all removed yourself from the sensory world. Well, how is the experience of, or did you experience the letting go of the elements in the body? And what was that like for you? Was there any fear in that? Was there, did you feel receptive to it? Did it have any significance or not? What was that? What was that meditation like? Okay, Cindy.
Come on, Sandra. I know you want to say something. I felt connected to a lot of people that have passed in a really peaceful way during the work that we did. It felt reassuring in a lot of ways, and I'm starting to feel less and less. I want to feel more engaged in the process of death coming instead of feeling any fear. There's a lot of fear that I feel coming from people in my circle right now because people are dropping off, and there's sort of this, like, the herd starts milling around a little bit as we all start to realize it's coming soon for all of us. So I'm really want to bring that sense of peace to it and the inevitability, right? It's and not bring any the fear that is kind of natural because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Instead, embracing the adventure of what it could be, right? And yeah, letting go of anything that doesn't need to be part of it. So it's a process. I'm glad to be here. Feels good.
Thanks. Thank you, Cindy.
Yeah, for me, it was sometimes Savasana feels quite heavy in the sense that, like, I can feel the weight of the body and really sense the connection with the ground. This one felt like much lighter. But in a way, like almost like not a feeling. Like it was a very nice way to, like, just kind of disconnect from the body.
And are you talking about the meditation or the Brahmari, or which part?
So yeah, the meditation, the Shavasana.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, Brahmari. We've practiced Brahmari often, so it's one that we know and we love. It's very energizing in a way. Like, yeah, it's very powerful.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Sandra, are you interested in sharing?
When I was in Savasana, today I experienced my neck so heavy. So it was a new sensation. I love to discover new things in my body. And even the sensation remains stay when we practice Brahmari. And now I just like in a calm and feel more quiet, my breath, and the sensation disappeared. It's so interesting.
Yeah. Thank you. You know, something for me about say my own fears about dying, and the practice like this helped me to realize that if I have the opportunity to die, you know, not everybody has the opportunity to experience dying. Sometimes it's very unexpected. But if one has the opportunity to die, in that way, it helps me to realize that I'll be moving toward that more than I'll be leaving something. And I think that I've observed that, not just in someone who's in bed actively dying, but moving away from their connection to this world. As we experience, and we've probably even, some of us at this point in our lives have experienced things like the hearing changes, the vision changes, sometimes taste, smell, these things change. Our physical body changes. And so we already begin to, experience that, not in a negative way. In fact, statistically, older people have a lot of joy in their lives, a lot of enjoyment at a certain point, maybe because they're not looking after their children and their parents or in the same way or whatever it is. There's some ease statistically. But that, like I observed it, say, in my mother, who, when the hearing goes, when you can't hear very well and you can't see very well, and you get tired of asking people to repeat themselves, so you just pretend you know what's going on in the outside world, but you don't actually have that same connection to it. I mean, you have your own idea of what's going on in the outside world, which is all any of us have, but your sensory organs aren't giving you that same information. And so you might be perceived by other people as having cognitive decline, but really you just can't hear what's being said. But there's also that I can't hear it. Gradually you just become less interested in it. You become less, it's not that important. I don't need to, most of what people are talking about isn't that important, really, right? As we're just sharing energy. So you just remove yourself from that. And I thought that's an example of how we begin to let go. Yeah. And that in that way, one no longer seeks food. And for a yogi, there's that already that discipline there. And for some other people, of not wanting to indulge as much in the sensory world anyway, feeling that it has its place, but it's not everything. And certainly the sutras teach us that. If you follow the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, then the goal is yogas chitta nirodha, complete cessation of fluctuations of the mind. That's everything. And the whole book is about how to get there. And you can use, and it refers to Ishvara, focusing on the God of your understanding as one means, but not the only means. But it does reference that. Whereas the Bhagavad Gita is entirely about God. It's like focus entirely on Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita to find that liberation as a means to liberation. So those are just the two seminal works of yoga that we refer to, and they have a slightly different, they're about something different each, which we're not always aware of. But so for us, this is a yoga workshop, but when we're working with other people, they don't necessarily have a spiritual practice. So that's something else. We don't want to impose a spiritual practice on our friends or others. And we may have our own, and maybe by example, we may be able to help them find a little bit more peace with that. But still, just being able to let go of our attachment to the sensory world to some extent. Letting go of that is a practice which we could engage with people in. I think everybody here is a yogi. as far as I know. Yeah. So you have the spiritual practice, and whether you are, you feel a connection to Ishvara or Krishna, or maybe you're Christian, or nature and the forest is your sacred, deity, your place of worship. It all matters when we die, when we're actively dying. What we've thought about in life is going to be there in death. And I'll be talking about this, and we'll be practicing with this as well. But what I'd like to do is take a 10-minute bio break, since it's morning and we've all had our tea or coffee or whatever. So I'd like to just pause for 10 minutes to give us time to have a bio break, and we'll meet back here at 20 to the hour. Okay.
Thank you.
Before we can continue with the practice, I do want to touch on, Cindy had brought up loss, and I wanted to touch on this as well. How this is it, how we experience this in community and in family and whatnot. And because this is also part of it, not just our death or how we help others die, but how we experience that in ourselves, and how this stays with us. And this also speaks to our own attachment to sure, we're very attached to the people we love. We are, but we know that it's all temporary, and that is a very intellectual sounding way of putting things. When we experience that, there's nothing more profound than someone being gone, being completely gone. Yeah. And so how we experience this, and how we settle with this, and as there's many. This workshop isn't about grief, but it is about the yogic element of how we are attached to the physical world, how we connect to our own physical bodies, everything around us, the joy it gives us. And of course, as we mature, it gives us less and less joy. Well, it doesn't give us less and less joy. Maybe it gives us more joy, but the joy doesn't necessarily come from fast cars and cake or nightclubs. It comes from different ways, not necessarily as physical. And one of the stories we'll be reading about is how that a yogi goes through life and moves from being out in the world to being more internalized or in the forest. Anyone wish to share anything about loss?
Yeah, when you were talking earlier about the elements, I mean, what is it? It was three years ago, a little more than 3 years ago. My grandmother passed away in Belgium, and we were by her bedside like in the hospital. Many of us from the family, and it's the first time I experienced a loved one pass away in front of me, and accompanying her as well. I mean, it was really it was a very beautiful moment for sure, in terms of like just how at peace we were. But when you were talking about the elements, I remember seeing it happen kind of live, and seeing kind of like the physical, like her physical self kind of slowly kind of change and kind of the energy kind of leaves the body, and the expressions leave the face, and just the breath getting shorter and shorter, and the air getting kind of lighter. So yeah, that was a very, very powerful moment to experience. And I do remember, like, we played her music, and we played her the music that she loved to hear. And there was, I always think about how she was there. She wasn't communicating in any way or responding in any way, but you could feel her presence, kind of slowly, kind of moving somewhere else, maybe.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. It's very personal. These experiences, they touch us deeply. They're very personal, and they don't come up very often. When we get together and socialize with our friends, it's not like we usually sit down and they say, "How are you?" and you share this story. It's not typically how we exchange with people, but it's a part of you. It's a part of who you are now, that experience. So thank you for sharing it. I'm just going to ask this. How long would you like to have, not how long do you want your life to be, but if you were told that you were going to die, that you have a condition and you're going to die, how long notice would you like? Months, years? How much notice do you think you would like?
That's an interesting question, because I almost feel like when you go into that state where I don't know, of course, I can't remember having done it already, but I'm sure I have, passing through into another dimension, a plane of existence, you almost feel like time is really not going to be relevant at all as we know it or think of it now. But yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that, because I've had some people recently who've passed really quickly, and it's been shocking to everyone, right? And then there's been others that we've had the chance to, well, with my father, it was like, we called it the period of grace, because he had a massive heart attack that they said he wouldn't live from. And then he recovered, and he had 6 months. And the period of grace, we called it at the time, we called it that because he needed to repair some relationships. He did the work, right? And he had that chance, and everyone was really aware of it, and it was really amazing that he got that. And I think when people leave suddenly, there's a lot of grief for people left behind if they feel there's things unsaid. So for me, I'm really trying to say the things while I can in this time when I have people interacting with people. But first thing that came to mind in terms of how much time would you want, I almost feel like a season would be great, like a full rotation of spring, summer, all the seasons. That would be the last season you would experience of summer, spring, and fall, and winter. And winter would be a great time to leave, because that's the dying off of most things. But I don't know. I've never really thought about having a choice like that, where you'd be able to say, this is the time when you're going to leave. I have a client right now her film is coming out. She's a filmmaker, and it's called Can I Get a Witness? And it's all about the time, choosing, like, that time is it's set up. I think it's an age-based time. You come to a certain age, and that's your time to go, right? And it's all orchestrated, your death. It'll come out soon. Look for it. But I don't know. That's a really hard question, Lee.
Thanks, Cindy. I thought your answer was very thoughtful and thorough, and that movie also sounds very intriguing. Um, would either of you like to share your thoughts on this?
It's a hard question. Actually, that Cindy said that resonate in me, because I never thought really, okay, how long time? And I left a beautiful idea. It's about all the seasons in order to be present in every change. And it's difficult, no? Because the first thought that jumped on the top of my head is, okay, I need time to share with my family, my friends. But in terms of time, months, years, is.
And remember, the question isn't about how long do you want to live. It doesn't mean that you have to, if shorten your life. It just means how much notice you would have.
Yeah. Yeah, I never thought seriously in this question. Yeah.
Yeah, I it's an interesting to notice because what it made me think of was, I mean, many friends who we know who have actually been given these types of like notices from doctors, and most of the time they really kind of outlive the notices, sometimes by many years. So it's a very curious question, and also it makes me think of like, why are doctors giving these timelines? We always feel like they kind of undershoot, but it is kind of like a notice for someone, and then maybe it is a trick that they play with patients in a way to like get them to kind of like do whatever they can to get healthier. But it is a very powerful question for sure. I do resonate also with that Cindy's answer about the seasons, isn't it? Yeah, it would make you kind of want to live every moment and just be in it and seeing the whole cycle of the earth and nature.
Thank you. There's a film, a Canadian film. I'll try to find it and send you a link for it, about a fellow who's given whatever a 6 month to live estimate by his specialist, and his adult children come home to be with him, to spend the last time with him, and he's accepted that he's going to die, and the life, they just sort of plan and make all the arrangements and everything, but then he doesn't die, and his kids are still there, and they end up giving up their lives to stay, their individual lives, in order to stay by their dad, because they still think maybe his death is imminent. And then the dad himself goes into denial in a way, and he's no longer prepared himself for death anymore. Now he's convinced he's going to live, and he eventually does die. But it was a very interesting, it was a documentary made by the daughter of their experience at the time. I'll try and find you a link for it. So that how this affects the people around us. Sudden death is a complicated death. People don't have time to prepare. It's unexpected. It's not so complicated for the person who's now gone, because as we understand, they're no longer, connected with it. It's not in their realm anymore. But it's difficult for the people who are left. And then there's I'll say for me, I think 3 or 4 months would be nice. Gives me enough time to get everything in order, make special plans, and be able to practice preparing to not be here anymore. And I feel like if it went a lot longer, it would be harder for me to let go, or I would let go in a weird way while I'm still here. So I think for me, 3 or 4 months just feels about right, if I'm lucky to have that opportunity to plan. In one intensive, death duel intensive I took, Bodhi had us draw a line to show how long we would live. And it starting from here, and the line just went here, and it was sort of arbitrary. And I drew a line, and I looked at that line, and I got nervous, and I made it longer. It's like sometimes it's so psychological to try to imagine, oh, should I even be talking about this? Should I even, but it made me laugh at myself that I was already took this line very seriously, got attached to it, and made it longer. So what will we do? Well, we have all these tools that we're developing to help us understand this. What I'd like us to do now is I'm going to pin myself again. Thank you so much for those shares. I'm going to pin myself again, and we're going to go into another pose. And I hope you understand that this is, it's not an asana class type of yoga class that we're doing. We're doing a few poses, mostly for support. We're going to do, if you have the props for it, we're going to do Viparita Karani, taking the legs up the wall and invert ourselves somewhat. And I put for distance, I put a yoga brick on its lowest side of the wall. If you don't have one of those, you can just leave a gap there. That gives for me about the right distance. That still allows my tailbone to drop. And then as I come off of the bolster at this end, I'm going to have the open chest and of from the Salamba Sarvangasana cycle, and to really encourage prana into this region. And what we'll do is we're going to be in this pose for a few minutes. I'm going to read to you a really interesting story from the Bhagavata Purana as we do this. And I have rope walls, but I'm not going to use those because you don't probably have them where you are. It makes it easy. You can somersault into the pose if you're feeling active and you'd like to do that. Or in order to get close to the wall, you sit at the edge of the bolster. Is what your aim is, to be in the middle of the bolster. If you start in the middle, you're going to go off the other side. So you want to sit on the edge of the bolster, bring a shoulder down, and roll your legs up. And then from here, if you're still not quite at the wall, you can just hold on to the mat and wiggle your way in. And spin the thighs in and stretch up through the legs, arms out to the sides. Do you want a blanket under your back for warmth? Or maybe you're on carpet? Whatever you like for this pose, okay? Gonna end up here. And we'll be here for a few minutes. If you're not used to this pose, your legs might become cold, in which case you can, come down into this Baddha Konasana legs and then stretch the legs up again. I'll give you a few moments to set up. Typically in Iyengar yoga, we don't do any inversions when menstruating, but for the purpose of what we're doing today, this pose is fine, and actually I rather like it in menstruation because it relieves heaviness in the legs. So even just taking the legs up the wall. When we elevate the legs and the pelvis in this way, we have the legs and the pelvis higher than the heart, and this encourages venous blood flow return to the heart. Also relieves the heart in some extent by for the same reason that we're encouraging the venous blood flow return to the heart passively instead of it requiring being pumped back. So this gives a little bit of relief to the heart. Now, if somebody had a chronic heart failure, they would not take the legs up. That would be the one real contraindication to this particular pose. In the case of chronic heart failure, we don't elevate the lower limbs at all. Give yourself a moment to get settled in. And once you're here, see that your chest is lifted. So ideally, the support of the bolster is somewhat creating a bit of a back bench for you so that the heart is lifted and the heart is lifting toward the chin. So the back of the neck is long. The spiritual gaze is toward the spiritual heart as the heart is lifted. And then you can close your eyes and be with your breath. And you'll notice that just the shape of this pose is going to work on the breath. And this is a Prashantism where he would say, having taken the position, take the condition of the asana. So just observe how this pose begins to work on the breath and in turn work on the mind. And the shape of the pose shapes the breath. The shape of the breath shapes the mind. And this is also something we can bring in as a tool when we're with someone who may be feeling anxious, or maybe we're feeling anxious, is to focus on the exhalation breath and just slowing the breath down. Telling the brain to relax, telling the brain to settle doesn't really work very well. We can be aware that we need to do that, but telling ourselves to do it doesn't work as well as, say, slowing down the breath. This is something we can do, and by slowing down the breath, we settle the mind. We were just speaking about loss. Excuse me. From the side of someone no longer being with us. I'd like to read to you from this tale of King Chitraktu. The dead son returns. And this is from, as I said, the Bhagavata Purana. There was once an emperor among the Sharasana people known as Chitraktu, who ruled over the earth. He was king of the earth. O king, during his reign, the earth provided all needs. Once the great sage Anjura, who happened to be wandering around those realms, arrived unexpectedly at his palace. The king, honored by Anjura, according to custom, by rising to greet him and making offerings and other such things. Then, after the sage had received hospitality and was comfortably seated, the king sat nearby with an attentive mind. When the king had respectfully bowed down on the ground and had taken his seat, and Jira returned respect to the king, he then addressed the king by speaking as follows: O king, are you and your citizens well and in good spirits? Just as a person is protected by the 7 evolutes of Prakriti, Prakriti being the material realm, so is the king protected by 7 Prakritis, which make up the constitutes of statehood, kingship, ministers, allies, treasury, fortress, army, and territory. Truly, when a king entrusts himself to these Prakritis, he secures the highest well-being. Reciprocally, the Prakritis, and this again, Prakritis being of the material realm, ministers, etc., are delivered of their cares by the king, O Lord of men. The king has had a beautiful life, and everyone is content in this king's kingdom, and he has love and friendship and all, but he has no children. And he states, because I am without progeny, my possessions, majesty, and kingdom, which are so sought after by rulers of the world, do not bring any solace to me, just as things unrelated to nourishment do not bring solace to those who are hungry and thirsty. Then, and Judah said to the monarch, a son will be born to you, O king. He will be a source of joy and also of sorrow to you. At that, Anjira, the son of Brahma, departed. And so it came to be, just from eating a sweet dish prepared by the sage, the queen became pregnant from Chatraktu. And so a son was born, and the king was happy, and his queen was happy, and the kingdom rejoiced. And there was great happiness and joy all around. However, there was envy. And sadly, the infant son died as a result of malice. When he heard that his son had died of unknown causes, the king became blind with grief. He rushed there, stumbling on the way, due to intense grief inflamed by the bonds of affection. Surrounded by his ministers and brahmanas, the king fell unconscious at the feet of his dead son. Taking long, drawn-out breaths, he was not able to speak. His voice became choked up and muffled with tears, and his clothes and hair were thrown into disarray. Such was his sorrow. At this, when the pure-hearted queen saw her husband overwhelmed with this great grief over the dead boy, his only son, she lamented in various ways. This increased the heartfelt pain of the ministers and citizens. As that husband and wife were lamenting, all their attendants, men and women, wept. Everything became deprived of life. The sage known as Anjura knew that the king had fallen into this state of despair, that his peace of mind was destroyed, and that he was without a guide. So he arrived there, accompanied by Narada. And to the king, he said, the king, overwhelmed with grief and lying next to the dead body, seemed equally dead himself. The 2 sages spoke to him and enlightened him with words of wisdom. This person for whom you grieve, O king, whom do you suppose he was to you in a previous life? Or is it at present, or will be in the future life? And who are you to him? Just as grains of sand are brought together and then thrust apart by the force of the current, so in the same way embodied beings are joined and separated by time. just as among seeds of grain, some seeds are productive and some are not productive, similarly among living beings. So now you experience the suffering of those who have sons. The same holds true for those who have partners, homes, riches, prosperities, and powers of various sorts. The temporary objects of the senses, such as sound, the opulences of kingship, a mighty kingdom, strength, treasury, servants, ministers, and friends. These all bestow trouble, fear, illusion, and grief. They are like dreams. They are creations of the mind. Although they are perceived, they are not real, since they are without enduring substance. A person contemplates them with the mind, due to the force of past karma, and then produces further varieties of karma. O king, after this, the celestial sage granted a vision of the king's dead son to all the grieving kinsmen, and then he spoke. So now the sage has brought back the dead son of the king, who is now a jiva. And the sage said, O Jivatman, embodied soul, blessings upon you. Just look at your mother and father and your friends and relatives burning with intense grief of what you have done, what he has done by dying, not of his own intention. Take back possession of your body for the remainder of your life, surrounded by your kinsmen. Indulge in the enjoyments bestowed by your father, and eventually ascend onto the throne of the king for yourself. And the jiva, soul, said back to them, in accordance with karma, I have been transmigrating through numerous births as a celestial being, animal and human. In which birth were these two, my father and mother? After uttering these words, the jiva then departed, and its relatives were struck with amazement. They severed the bonds of personal affection and were freed from their sorrow. The story of grieving, a grieving family longing for their child. And then through the gift of a sage, the child returns as the soul that embodied the child's body and asks, who are you? Which parents were you? Which life was this? Bend your knees, or depending on how you're set up, I'm saying that turning to the side isn't that easy necessarily. You can wiggle out away from the wall and come on out of your pose. And let's come to Supta Baddha Konasana. And I'll just let you reflect on that reading. We're going to have a little bit of time at the end for some more discussion, so please reflect on the imprint of that story for you. And we're going to come into Supta Baddha Konasana now. You can have your eye cover again if you like. You might have had it in the last pose. And Supta Baddha, the Baddha means bound. You can bind if you have a belt, but if you don't have a belt, that's okay. You can have the yoga bricks for under your knees. There's a few different ways we could come into this pose, really. If you have a second bolster, you could rest the legs over that second bolster under the knees. And you don't need to belt the legs for that. That's one option. Another is if you have an extra blanket, you can take that blanket, open it up 2 or 3 times so that it's large enough to tuck, and soles of the feet come together. I know you all know Supta Baddha Konasana, but some of the people who are relying on the recording later may not. The soles of the feet come together in Supta Baddha Konasana. You could also take this blanket over the feet and under the knees and draw it in and let this provide the support for under the hips. Or if you have a belt, you can belt the legs. So choose one of these versions, please, to come into Supta Baddha Konasana. Soles of the feet together, knees apart, and the support of the bolster or the blanket is meant to allow the groins to relax. Same with, I'll demonstrate with the belt and the yoga bricks now. I'm going to take got a big loop in my yoga belt, the other way so you can see the end, and put it around my pelvis, not the lumbar, but over on the pelvis, over the feet, and I have the tail end pointing toward my head, so I can just pull that toward me. And then some support under the knees to allow the groins to relax and the hips to release. So there's 2 reasons you need support here. And if you're able to, if your knees just come down to the ground and you're very comfortable, that's fine. But if your knees are in the air, you want some support underneath through one of the variations I demonstrated. And this is to allow the groins to be soft, or the other possibility is you might feel tightness or a little pinching in the outer hip joint. So make sure that whatever support you use is sufficient, that you're able to relax here. The bolster is along the length of the spine, and you're going to lift the hips, tuck your tailbone toward your heels, making the lumbar long, and allowing the region from the solar plexus to the lesser pelvis to all be soft and a little bit gently receding here. You're going to be here for a few minutes. I want you to be comfortable in this pose. If you are uncomfortable in the pose, you will be tethered to that sensation. Okay, so that will be a sensory perception that will distract you from the experience of this pose. Not all sensory perceptions are pleasant, are they? Some of them are quite unpleasant. And as somebody who's worked in healthcare, and particularly people's physical pains, discomforts, etc., for many years, I found that once we are tethered to the physical realm through our pain and discomfort, it interferes with our spiritual practice. Okay, so please be at ease. Find sthira sukham, steadiness, ease, and comfort in your posture. And we'll be doing a practice again, going through a few poses here, but I'm going to read it to you a little bit more first, starting with another story. Well, I'm going to read from the Bhagavad Gita. the Bhagavad Gita, of whatever being one thinks at the end while leaving the body, to that alone one goes, because of constantly thinking of that being. As you think, so you become, essentially. So that is a word of wisdom as well as a guide to us of whatever being one thinks at the end while leaving the body, to that alone one goes. And it's not like you can spend your entire life thinking about chocolate and then be given 3 months to live and decide you're going to think about something more spiritual. Maybe 3 months would be enough, I don't know. But the teachings tell us it takes your lifetime, many lifetimes. Depending how far you are along the path, when you start, you may have that opportunity, but for most of us, this is a lifelong practice, preparing our mind state. That we can't just change our intentions overnight. And this next story from the Bhagavata Purnima will tell us about this. The tale of King Bharata and the mind at the moment of death. The King Bharata, who was another king of the world, and in fact, India was originally known as Bharata, is a king who leaves to go out into the forest and become a forest dweller and an ascetic renunciate. So there are 4 stages of life for a yogi. The first of these is brahmacharya, the celibate student. The second, grahastha, the householder. The third, vanaprastha, forest dweller. And the 4th and final stage, sannyasa, full ascetic renunciate. And a yogi is permitted to experience all these stages, if life permits. In the story of Bharata, the great devotee of Lord Vishnu, was dedicated to ruling the earth when he was deliberating on how to govern it. In order of his father, he took his wife and had a daughter. He enjoyed his way of life for 10 million years, at which time he perceived that the appropriate moment for extinguishing his karma had arrived. So this is the idea, is that one will accrue karmas throughout life, but one can also reduce karmas. And by removing oneself from the sensory realm and focusing on a spiritual practice, one is able to now reduce karmas. So at this point, he divided among his family, his personal wealth bestowed by his father and grandmother according to the norms of inheritance. He then set out from his home, the abode of all kinds of opulence, to the holy place, Pulaha. So he left the abode of all kinds of opulence to the ashrama of Pulala. Bharata lived alone in the grove around that place known as Pulaha Ashrama. He dedicated himself to the worship of Lord Vishnu with varieties of flowers, shoots, tulsi, leaves, and water, and with offerings of bulbs, roots, and fruits. Detached from desires for sense objects, he cultivated peacefulness of mind and attained ultimate bliss. By such uninterrupted worship of the Supreme Being, Bharata became calm and his heart melted from the surge of his growing love for God. All the hair on his body was seen to stand on end due to the force of his ecstasy, and his vision became obstructed by tears of affection caused by his contemplation. His intelligence was absorbed in his heart, which was like a deep lake overflowing with supreme bliss from his devotional practices of ever-increasing meditation on the red lotus-like feet of his beloved Lord. In this state, he even sometimes forgot the very service to the Lord he was supposed to be performing. Once, after finishing his customary duties and taking his bath in the great river, Bharata sat down on the water bank, reciting the sacred syllable Om for a period of 2.5 hours. Just then, a deer arrived at the body of water at this spot, desiring to drink. Just at the very moment that she was drinking the water, the fierce sound of a lion's roar burst forth nearby, striking terror in all creatures. The deer, overwhelmed and terrified, dropped dead. The deer happened to be pregnant. The embryo dislodged due to her great fear and emerged from her womb and fell into the waters. Separated from her herd and traumatized by exhaustion and fear as well as the leap, she lost the calf. The king sage Bharata became personally extremely, The king sage Bharata saw the deer's offspring had been dislodged by its parent and was being helplessly carried away by the current. So with the compassion of well-wishing soul, he lifted it out and took it to his ashrama hermitage, understanding that it was motherless. Indeed, Bharata became personally extremely attached to this deer. Because he was contemplating, petting, fondling, and protecting the nurturing of it day by day, his spiritual practices, adherences to the moral vows, and worship of the Supreme Being were discarded one by one. And finally, after the passing of some days, all were abandoned. He became obsessed with the fawn and spent all of his time grooming, caring for, and loving the fawn. Even while he was in the middle of performing his religious rites, the emperor would get up midway and cast a glance at her. At such times, his mind reassured, he prayed for blessings for the fawn, saying, "May there always be good fortune for you." With his heart bewildered by such unsustainable delusions, manifesting in the form of the fawn due to the force of his previous karma, Bharata abandoned his yoga practices. He became solely engaged with the fawn. And then finally, unsurpassable death in the form of time, voracious and consuming, appeared before him, like a snake before a mouse hole. At that time, gazing at the deer who was lamenting at his side, like a child, his mind completely absorbed in the deer, Bharata left this world, and with it, the deer. He subsequently himself obtained the body of a deer. However, along with losing the dead body, he did not lose the memory of his past life as others do, because he was very advanced ahead of time in his practices. In that next birth, as a consequence of his previous efforts to worship God, Bharata was able to remember that he himself was the cause of attaining that state as a deer. In this way, his detachment from worldly objects concealed by birth as a deer, Bharata left his mother deer and returned again to the ashrama in Pulaha. It was a sacred place where the sacred Salagrama stone is found, a place favored by groups of tranquil-minded sages. Sustaining on dry leaves, grass, and plants, and with only his own Atman as companion, Bharata awaited death in that place, very fearful of developing attachments now, counting the days until his delivery from the karma that had caused his state of being a deer. When the time came, he gave up his deer body, which was wet from bathing in the waters of the holy place. He had one more incarnation as the son of a Brahmin family. And by the Lord's grace, he remembered the series of his previous births, and so always concerned about obstacles to his realization of the Atman, he presented himself to the world as a mad, stupid, blind, and deaf man, and lived out his final incarnation as a being who was of no interest to others. And so he was able to remain unattached from the world, as the world had no interest in him. And so he completed his cycle of incarnations. The story of the importance of what we hold in our mind at the time of death. If you wish to, you could stretch out your legs now. And if you're comfortable where you are, you can stay there. I'm going to do a short practice now on the vayus, the 5 vayus of the body, starting in the abdominal region. And whether you're in Supta Baddha Konasana or you stretched out your legs, we're going to focus on the Samana Vayu of this abdominal region. And in this region, we will also include the chakras, the Muladhara, Swadhisthana, and Manipura. The 5 vayus or winds of the body are the Samana Vayu in this abdominal region. And now I invite you to bring your breath into this area. Let's focus from the pubic plate to the lower rim of the ribs and the outer bank of the ribs. And make this area like a peaceful lake. Focusing your inhalation, exhalation breath here. We'll just do this for a few easy rounds of breathing. And as you inhale, inhaling into the belly and exhaling out from the belly. If you're feeling any discomfort in your legs, you're still in Supta Baddha Konasana, I invite you to stretch your legs out so you're not focused on discomfort. Slow, soft inhalation, exhalation breath in the Samana Vayu region, the organic body. Eyes are softly receding. Notice where your tongue is. Is it against the upper palate or soft and spreading in the lower palate? Throat soft. And now everyone, we're going to change poses now, preparing to come out of this pose. You can stretch out your legs, push down through your palms and come on up. We're going to take a heart bench pose now. To do this, you take your bolster and place, if you have yoga bricks, you can put under the bolster. You put one on its low side and one on the horizontal height, and have a blanket for my head. And I'll have my legs stretched out. Now, if you don't have the yoga bricks for this, you could stack blankets up underneath. Or if you have two bolsters and you don't have these other props, you can always put the bolster behind and support yourself this way. And legs will be outstretched. Now, if you have any weight you'd like to put on your legs, you're welcome to do this. And you can have your eye cover. When a yogi dies, it is said that a yogi leaves through the Swaraswara chakra of the crown of the head. And one can work with the vayus to draw that energy up toward the crown of the head for this purpose. So we're going to practice in this way, starting with the Samana Vayu, which we just touched on. I'm just going to put these blankets on my legs. I can cover my eyes. I'm just going to demonstrate the pose. So here, as we draw the energy up, and you don't have to change positions, but I thought we would enjoy taking different postures for this. We're moving from the Samana Vayu and drawing the energy upward now. So come on into your posture. And I'll give you a moment to get ready. And the five Vayus are the Samana Vayu of the lower abdomen, the Prana Vayu of the chest, the Udana Vayu. Oh, excuse me, I missed the Upana Vayu of the pelvic floor region. So we'll start with the Upana, go to the Samana, and then the Prana while in this pose. The Apana Vayu of the lesser pelvic region can have the effect of drawing the energy of the legs upward. Having a little bit of weight on the legs helps to earthify the legs and stabilize them. Again, bringing your awareness to the area from the pubic plate to the lower ribs and the outer banks of the rib cage. And we're addressing here the Apana Vayu, Samana Vayu region, drawing up that energy from the pelvic floor into the Samana Vayu. Just focus the inhalation breath rising up. And when I teach pranayama, I call it the pit of the abdomen. And we were talking about the base of the sacrum and in some ways the Kundalini energies. So what we're talking about is Shakti, which is energy. And drawing that Shakti upward from the pelvic floor, feel that inhalation rise up, spreading into the outer banks of the abdominal region to the edge of the rib cage, and an exhalation breath. Let's keep the breath contained in this region. And we can call it breath. The prana rides on the breath. Vayu being another word, being the winds. But being intentional as you inhale up, although we know anatomically in Western understanding, we inhale, exhale through the nasal passages, but the pranic energy rises up from the pit of the abdomen, spreading to the outer banks, to the edge of the rib cage. You can feel that energy percolate here in a slow, soft exhalation. Breathing according to your own pace, but maintain that pranic breath for now in this region, from the Apana Vayu to the Samana Vayu. And taking an exhalation breath, I'm going to bring that next inhalation breath up into the chest region, from the inhaling from the pit of the abdomen, rising and spreading to the armpit chest, and a slow, soft, smooth exhalation. Apana, Samana, Prana, Vayus. And continue in this way. Allow yourself to dwell in the chest box region. Spread that breath laterally. Open the gates of the sternum. Taking a full Ujjayi inhalation breath and a slow, soft, smooth exhalation. Gaze is downward, spiritual gaze toward the spiritual heart. Full Ujjayi inhalation, exhalations. The head is slightly elevated. The gaze is toward the heart, spiritual gaze toward the spiritual heart. Creating a container from apana to prana vayus. Gradually climbing up, the Shakti rising up the spine. And in this way, we also clear the chakras. And my final reading from the Bhagavad Gita. At the time of death, with steady mind and devotion, united by the power of yoga, and only by fixing the prana perfectly in the middle of the two eyebrows, one reaches the supreme resplendent being. The seeker meditating upon Brahman gains the supreme resplendent being. This verse describes that stage where the seeker crosses over from the terrestrial experience to transcendental enlightenment, the time of forthgoing from mortality to immortality. So although you're not departing just yet, you can practice this, focusing the prana between the brows and the ajna chakra. The ajna chakra being the gateway to the Sahasrara chakra, the 1,000-petaled lotus that arises from the crown of the head. The Udana Vayu of the throat is the spiritual gateway between the Apana, Samana, Prana, Vayus to this space between the brows. And the Vyana Vayu, wind, which is circulating everywhere. Now, become aware of this sensation of prana circulating throughout you, all the way to the nail beds. And after your next exhalation, take a fuller inhalation, preparing to come back into this time and space, bringing your awareness back to the surface, as it's still your time here and now. And when you're ready, placing your hands palms down, push yourself up chest first to sitting. And we're going to transition into your last Shavasana for today. And have a blanket for a pillow. Have your eye cover. You can have a bolster under your knees or on top of your thighs, as you prefer. And come into your Shavasana to end our practice today. And in this Shavasana, we're going to follow a guided meditation from a great teacher. And just give you a moment to settle into your Shavasana. And as you do, as you exhale, let go, surrendering to the earth. to the ground beneath you. Going deep inside. And let the breath be the doer. The thoughts go receding into the background. There are two rivers flowing through you, the river of breath and the river of thoughts. And stay with the river of breath. Let go completely. Slow, soft, smooth inhalations. Slow, soft, smooth exhalations.
Those who seek me in all things, and all things in me, are never lost to me, nor am I ever lost to them. Know for certain that whatever is found in this creation arises out of a combination of my material and spiritual energies. I am the origin and dissolution of all things. There is nothing beyond me. Archana. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. bewildered spirit souls under the influence of the three modes of material nature think themselves to be doers of activity, which are in fact actually carried out by nature. As a lamp in a windless place does not waver, so the yogi whose mind is focused remains always steady in meditation on the transcendental self. For the one who is born, death is certain. For one who has died, birth is certain. Since you cannot avoid either fate, you should not lament.
Deepening your breath now, bringing your awareness back to the surface, rebirthing again into this time and place, gently moving fingers, toes, wrists, ankles, moving intuitively, experiencing your body, sensation of your vehicle. And when you're ready, draw on your knees, turn to your right, Just be there for a moment. Give yourself an opportunity to experience the sensations, which are subtle level sensations. And turning toward the floor, gently push yourself up to seated. Come to a seated position. Keep your gaze lowered. And then let's come together for the last part of this workshop for our final discussion. I understand you're all very quiet now, and that's what yoga does, right? It brings us into a state of not needing to speak, not needing to externalize ourselves, but for the sake of our finishing our workshop, I'm going to attempt to draw you back into this environment. We did a practice with the vayus of drawing the energy upward, imagining what it is to, as a tool, a practice tool, to raise the Shakti up through the crown of the head, which is the means of leaving the body for a yogi. We experienced the elements leaving the body in another practice. Since we last had our discussion, I read to you on two different stories. One on very powerful one of the death of a son who comes back to the grieving parents, and the son says, "Well, who are you?" It's kind of intense, isn't it? The idea that we deeply mourn the loss is ours, but they're gone. And so even as an infant, and that's a story where we tend to feel quite deeply about children because we feel they haven't completed their lives. And yet if we believe in the incarnation and reincarnation and whatnot, we really don't know what a full life cycle is. In terms of reincarnation, a full life cycle can be quite brief, or it could be quite long. It's and then we have to bring in what is time. So then we really don't know. And then I love the story of Bharata, who falls in love with the deer and then becomes so engaged with the deer, he forgets that his purpose is to unite with spirit and to end his incarnation in this way. And he comes back as the deer. And one of the sweet things about that story is, according to yogic philosophy, other animals like dogs and cats and deers and whatnot don't accumulate karma in their incarnations in that way because their motivations are much different than human motivations. So they just live out the life of a deer, the life of a dog. A dog eats meat, but it doesn't accumulate negative karma because it eats meat, because that's the nature of the dog. Whereas humans are more complex, according to the scriptures, and so we accumulate karma based on our actions and inactions. And karma can be positive or negative, klishta or klishta, but it's still karma. Would anyone like to say anything about their experience of anything that came up from those stories or from the last practice? We're going to part in silence. Will be how we will do it? Okay, let's all sit in order to close the practice. We'll chant the Om once together, bringing the palms together in Atmanjali Mudra and bringing the thumbs to the heart center. Lift the heart center to greet the prayer hands. And gazing slightly downward, take an exhalation breath and a full inhalation. Om. May the benefits of our practice be extended to others. Namaste. Thank you all for taking this workshop and for showing up today. Sometimes when not everyone comes, I'm glad to have two, or I don't know what I would have done. I still welcome any parting comments. Okay, well, it was wonderful to share time with you, especially on this very, very important subject. Yeah, Elliot, you're going to say something, aren't you?
Yeah, I was gonna say thank you so much for this beautiful practice. I feel like I'm just gonna float through the rest of the day.
Good. You're most welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you. It's an amazing practice. I have a lot of things to think and process in my heart. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm glad it feels that way. You will have the recording too to come back to. And, I said I'd make the recording available for 20 days, but I may leave it up longer. It's so you can appreciate it. And yeah. And I'm just gonna stop the recording now.